Stumpy Dome. Poor Thomas couldn't answer. He had no breath. He just puffed slowly away to rest and had a long... One day, Edward was in the shed where he lived with the other engines. They were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it. "The driver won't choose you again," said Gordon. "He wants strong engine," and the driver was very pleased. "I'm going out again tomorrow," Edward told the other engines that night. "What do you think of that?" Gordon was very cross, grumbled, "The shame of it, the shame of it, oh, the shame." He ran on to the next station, and there he found that the driver and fireman were very pleased with him. The engine's name is Henry. His driver and fireman argued with him, but he would not move. Sudden dirt from the tunnel had spoilt his lovely green paint and red stripes anyway. He wondered if he would ever be allowed to pull trains again. But I think he deserved his punishment. Don't you? "I'm going to poop at Henry," said Gordon. He was almost there, and there was Gordon going slower and slower. "Have a run to ease your joints and find..." Then they coupled him up. He felt just as bad next morning. Henry usually pulled the first train, and Thomas had to get his coaches ready. "If Henry is ill," he thought, "perhaps I shall pull his train." Thomas ran to find the coaches. Come along," he fussed. "There's plenty of time, there's plenty of..." So Thomas ran round to the front and back down on the coaches ready to start. "Don't be impatient," said his driver. "Wait till everything is ready." But Thomas was too excited to listen. "Henry says it's hard to pull trains, but people have never seen me pulling a train before." But for a long time afterwards, the other engines laughed at Thomas and said, "Look, there's Thomas who forgot about the coaches." Next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find trucks. Wouldn't wait. Come on," he puffed. All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss," grumbled the trucks. Hurry, called Thomas. He was feeling very proud of himself, but the trucks grew crosser and crosser. At last, Thomas... "Steady now, steady," warned the driver as they reached the top. No, answered. "Go on," they giggled in their silly... "I do," he cried. He rattled his... "I must stop." Almost as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine. There were lots of trucks, and Thomas worked very... Help! The engine was... They're pushing me, he panted. On, laughed. James's driver and fireman were feeling him all over to see if he was hurt. "Never mind, James," they said. He was hard at work, puffing backwards and forwards all afternoon. "This'll teach you a lesson." He puffs proudly backwards and forwards with them all day. Say, "Poop." Next morning, the Fat Controller spoke severely to him. "If you can't behave, I shall take away your red coat and have you painted. We're going to stop." James had not seen the Fat Controller for several days. He was left alone for being naughty and was not even allowed out to push coaches and trucks in the yard. "I hope now that you will be a better engine. You have given me a lot of trouble. People are laughing at my railway, and I don't like that at all. I can and I will. Look out for trouble, James, warned his driver. We'll go fast and get them up before they know it. Don't let them stop, he panted. Will the top never come? I've done it! I've done it, he puffed. Hooray! It's easy now. But his driver shut off steam. They've done it again. We've left our tail. That's why it was easy, said James, as he backed the other truck off as hard as he could. In the yard when Edward pulled up. Beep, beep, he whistled. Then James saw some trucks on the line behave. After that, you deserve to keep your red coat. Henry and Gordon were alone with James. Although the fat controller was beginning to think well of him, whenever a chance came, the other engines would talk of nothing but bootlaces. Remember the time one had to be used to get you out of trouble, James, they would tease. James tried to get his own back, talking about engines who got shut up in tunnels and stuck on hills. But they wouldn't listen. You talk too much, little James, said Gordon. A fine, strong engine like me has something to talk about. I'm the only engine who can pull the express. When I'm not there, they need 2 engines. Think of that. I've pulled expresses for years and have never once lost my way. I seem to know the right line by instinct. He pushed some trucks into their proper siding. Yes, sir, I'll try. From a station, he sings, oh, come along, we're rather late. Oh, come along, we're rather late. And the coaches sing, we're coming along, we're coming along. They don't mind what Thomas says to them, because they know he is trying to please them. But if Thomas is cross, he... Come along, puffed Thomas. But Clarabelle tried to tell Thomas what had happened. We haven't a guard, we haven't a guard. But he was hurrying and wouldn't listen. Annie and Clarabelle tried to put on their brakes, but they couldn't without the... Thomas didn't stop till they came to a signal. Quicker than ever before. The sight of the river. Driver said, no. What would the fat controller say if we were late? Every time he'd do it again. No, sir, I won't, said Thomas sadly. Later, Thomas saw the track. I don't like it, said Thomas's driving. I hope it doesn't stop us. Huh, said Thomas, soft stuff, nothing to it. And he puffed on, feeling cold but confident. They finished their journey safely. You'll need your snowplow for the next journey, Thomas, said his driver. Huh! Snow is silly soft stuff, it won't stop me. Made Thomas cross. He shook it and he banged it, and when they got back, it was so damaged that the driver had to... The driver was worried too. It's not bad, but there was trouble ahead. And off they went again. Come along, sang Thomas. We're coming along, sang Anne. Then he looked, there's a station. Then he work, you know. Goodbye. Hurrah, we're off, puffed Thomas. I've done it, I've done it. The big stations at both ends of the line each have a turntable. The fat controller had made them so that the tender engines can be backwards as forwards. But to hear Gordon talk, you would have thought that the fat controller had given him a tender just to show how important he was. Chuckled James, I'm not so fat as you. That night, the 3 engines had an indignation meeting. It's shameful to treat tender engines like this. Gordon has to go backwards and people think he's a tank engine. James spins round like a top and everyone laughs at us. And to add to that, the fat controller makes us all shunt in dirty side. Decided to go on strike. Engines, you fetch our coaches and we will pull them. Tender engines don't shunt engines. At last, Gordon, James, and Henry were cold, lonely, and miserable. They wished now they hadn't been so silly. Out again. At last, the Fat Controller arrived. "I hope you are sorry," he said, "and understand that you are not so important after all. We have a new tank engine called Percy who helps pull coaches, and Thomas and Edward have worked the main..." "I'll run away," he puffed. He had no driver to shut off steam and apply the brakes. "I want to stop, I want to stop," he puffed. The man in the signal box. Percy puffed wearily onto a nice empty siding, ending in a big bank of earth. Presently, Gordon arrived. Still cheeky because he is that sort of engine, but he is always most careful when he goes on them. Henry managed to start, but his fireman was not satisfied. "Henry is a bad steamer," he said to the Fat Controller. "I build up his fire, but it doesn't give enough." Henry tried very hard, but it was no good. When the Welsh coal came, Henry's driver and fireman were excited. "Now we'll show them, Henry, old fellow." "Steady, old fellow," he would say. "There's plenty of time. Early tomorrow, we've got to take the flying kipper. Don't tell Gordon, but I think if we pull the kipper nicely, the Fat Controller will let us pull the express." They were going to do better. Signal light shone green as they passed. "All clear, Henry. Away we go." Into a siding were frozen, and the home signal shuddered. A goods train was waiting in the siding to let the flying kipper pass, and the driver and fireman were drinking cocoa in the brake van. A crowd of people waited to see him arrive in his new shape. "Thank you very much. I am so late for school," because they wait to see Henry go by. He does it so well that Gordon is jealous. But that's another story. And it was empty. Kitty Trot hummed his coaches. Him instead. "They've broken our glass! They've broken our glass!" sobbed the coaches. The passengers weren't hurt, but they were cross. "Call the police." "No," said the driver. "Leave it to Henry and me." "What will you do?" they asked. "Can you keep a secret?" "Yes." "Are you ready, Henry?" said his driver. "Sneeze hard when I tell you." "Hip, hip, hooray!" called the children, and they waved till Toby was out. Open, and he woke with a start to see his driver waving a piece of paper. "Wake up, Toby," they shouted, "and listen to this. It's a letter from the stout gentleman." Toby listened and... There's a line to a quarry at the end of Thomas's branch. "Good morning." Thomas expected that the new constable would be friendly too, but with... They've been firm friends ever since. At first, the trucks behaved well, what he would say to Toby when they next met. "I've got to stop! I've got to stop!" groaned James. But the tar wagons and some trucks were all to pieces. The Fat Controller met them. "Well done," puffed happily with the news. "Fat face," whistled Henry innocently. onto the turntable to get him. I won't go, grumbled Gordon. Don't be silly, puffed Edward. He moved slowly forward to jam the table, but he couldn't stop himself and slithered into a ditch. Ooh, Controller. So Gordon didn't want to take the special train and ran into a ditch. He's dreadfully rude. I feel quite ashamed. Funny. That was funny, he chuckled. He felt very pleased with it. Come back here! Down a mine, is he? Bell were complaining. It's always the same before Christmas, they groaned. We feel... When work was over, Thomas went to see the other engines. All their coats had been polished. "Ha," said Gordon, "just look at us. Your driver will have to work fast to get you as smart as us."